For everyone that's just joining me, hi, my name is Vampire Preacher, and today we are going to be going into a possibly controversial topic. Spider-Man! I need pictures of him.
Cash money for a picture of Spider-Man!
But not in the MCU, because he's out! But before he's out, officially, let's do an unboxing of his latest wave, the Far From Home wave. That's right, it is the Molten Man wave of Marvel Legends action figures. Now, we've got 6 of the 7 figures, mostly because, like I said before, Spider-Man is out of the MCU. You heard it here first, folks. I'm completely joking. Just doing a little J. Jonah Jameson there for you. But the Spider-Man from Far From Home in his advanced suit doesn't have a build-to-figure piece. So, I don't need a probably 70th Spider-Man figure. I really don't. So instead, we'll show you what we've got in place of him later on. But, enough of me talking, let's get into the figures. About time, right?
Kept you waiting, huh?
Our first figure on the docket today is from the Spider-Man Far From Home movie. We have 2 movie figures and 4 comic book figures in this wave. So, be prepared for that. The first one is going to be our definite hero. Definitive hero. Definitely a hero. Good guy. Mysterio. So, let's take a closer look at this guy. We, of course, have our standard clamshell here, with our artistic rendering on the side and back, with the entirety of the wave shown here on the back. Now, let's pop this guy open and see exactly what we've got inside. So, of course, we've got the new style of Marvel Legends packaging, which, I gotta admit, it was weird at first, I kinda like it. Our backing here, which has the Spider-Man symbol, the one that is seen in Far From Home. Again, kinda cool. Our rather large leg here. This is a beefy leg for what's going to be a very weird-looking figure. And, of course, we have... See, I never even noticed this during the movie. The designs and the really intricate detailing on Mysterio's cape. That's great detailing for the figure here. But inside, we, of course, have Quentin Beck, spoilers alert. Spoiler alert here, Quentin Beck is the name of Mysterio, the definitive hero of Spider-Man Far From Home, and clearly the next Iron Man. So we also have 2 additional hands that come with our Mysterio figure, 2 fists versus the 2 open hands. The only thing that I wish we had is something that I really wish we had. An extra head. There's no part of me that wouldn't like to pop off old fishbowl heads here.
Again.
Old fishbowl head here's head. That was a tongue twister. And pop on a Jake Gyllenhaal head. That would have been cool. But instead we just have the fishbowl. There's nothing underneath. Different Mysterios have done, for different figures of him, have done different ways of showing the fishbowl head and showing what's underneath. Going back to the original ToyBiz version, which had an action feature where you could click around for 3 different heads. One a weird baby head, one a weird monster head, and one actual Quentin Beck's face. Or the latest one in the comic book wave that we got not too long ago of comic book Mysterio. That particular one had a removable fishbowl, and then just a weird skull-like serpent. It's a really weird thing they put in there with him. I'd really like a just standard Quentin Beck head, or, if we can get it, fingers crossed, a Bruce Campbell head. I would love nothing more than to be able to play out our we could have almost had this in Spider-Man 3 fantasies of Bruce Campbell as Mysterio, as he was originally cast.
According to bullshit you read on the World Wide Web of bullshit.
But enough of me getting into it. Let's get into the figure itself. He's actually pretty solid in hand. He feels really nice. For his head articulation, I mean, look at this thing. It's a fishbowl. But it can look down? Yeah, it can look down, I suppose? And it can look a decent way up. It's a fishbowl! How do you know which way it's looking? You get kind of a vague idea. That's the best you got. For his shoulder articulation, he can actually go, wow! He's not only T-posing, he can actually go a higher degree than that. It's just a little bit above a T-pose, but at least he can get a T-pose in. Not half bad. We, of course, have the bicep swivel. For his double-jointed elbows, ladies and gentlemen, I know I can't believe it. I doubt you can either. Quentin Beck, Mysterio of all people, has, and say it with me, boys and girls, that good flex. That's right, he's got it. We want it, he's got it. About time. Thank you, Hasbro. We also have the in and out motion on his wrist joints here. On the fists, it looks like they're the standard in and out as well, so I'm not even going to bother going into those guys. He does not have an ab crunch, which, Hasbro, we've seen that you can do this. We haven't seen it on stream yet, but I know, as well as you know, you can do an ab crunch with a swivel, and it works, and it looks pretty good, and it gives great flexibility. Why didn't you? Just make that the standard, guys. And you'll be seeing it soon on a future stream. In the meantime, for our ab swivel, we've got a little bit of that sideways back and forth here. He can come forward. Yep, that's it. Did you blink? Then you missed it. And backward. Yeah, that's a convincing... I guess it's convincing enough for Mysterio. Does he or doesn't he? He almost looks like he does have a waist cut here hidden by this belt, and I just can't really see it. Or does... No, it seems like no matter how hard I'm trying to move him, he does not. Huh. Well, that seems like a waste. Moving on. We've got, for our hip articulation, actually, that's a lot better than I was expecting. He's got halfway decent hip articulation on him. He can go a decent way out. That's not bad. We also have thigh cuts, but they are very stiff thigh cuts here. Ooh, that is a stiff joint to turn. For our double-jointed knees, we've got some motion back and forth. It's not fantastic, but there is a degree of motion here. For our boots, there's no boot cuts, even though there's obvious places for where boot cuts could go. What a strange decision. What a strange decision for a corporate company to make, to not put boot cuts onto boots. I wonder. We do have ankle articulation, though, with a decent degree out, decent degree in, a painful degree out. he can go fairly far forward, and he can go all the way on point back. The sculpt, out and out, seems to be a new sculpt. I will give them that. I will give Hasbro that. It doesn't seem to be reuse of pretty much anything. Even the back joint here that his cape goes into, if you see that, that is a new style of joint. That is a very odd decision. Why in the world would Hasbro make a new joint for a new cape, for a new mold, that can give us that good flex, but not give us a waist cut, an ab crunch, or a boot cut? I'll be honest, your guess is as good as mine. All in all, is it a bad figure? No, it's not. If you want a MCU version of Mysterio, he's great. If you want a less comic book version of Mysterio, one that looks somewhat more like the version seen in the Spider-Man games, if you just want a more modern version of Mysterio, he's not bad. He's not bad at all. Is he great? Could have been really great. But he's not bad. Rating it, I'd give it... let's call him, yes, exactly. You hear her, she's out and out telling us just how much this figure could have been better. Yeah, I agree. 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10. That sounds absolutely perfect. It could have been a better figure, but it could have been worse. So, moving on. Let's get into a villain who's definitely not the hero of Spider-Man Far From Home. We'll get into our first comic book figure of the day, Doppelganger. Now, those of you who are either A, old like me, or B, nostalgic like me, would remember Doppelganger from the 90s cartoon, from a ton of comic book appearances, and, lest we forget, from Maximum Carnage, the video game where he was featured. We of course see our window pane on the front, our artistic rendering on the side, which is also the same artistic rendering that's on the back, with the, of course, selection of figures in the wave. Now, inside of here, it doesn't look like we've got a whole lot of accessories that come with Doppelganger. But we do have the nicest accessory for him, making it so I don't need to make a custom one, based on the 6-armed Spider-Man that was in the Kingpin wave as last seen on this channel. Of course, we once again have the standard new Marvel Legends packaging. No Spider-Man symbol here, just a neat web. On the inside, we have an arm of Molten Man, which is... this is going to be one weird-looking figure. He's going to be big. He's going to be so odd. And he's got chunks of metal bars coming out of his arm, and some semi-translucent plastic in some places and not in others. It's going to be a mess, but it's going to be a fun mess. And of course, in this wave of Bring On the Bad Guys, there are no accessories to this figure. It's just Doppelganger. Now, there are parts of this that I really question some of their design choices. Namely, the biggest one that I'm already questioning is this torso. Ladies and gentlemen, look at this. Just look at this torso. Now, if it looks at all familiar, it should. That is the Amazing Spider-Man 2's torso. It is from the figures that they made from The Amazing Spider-Man 2. They just reused that torso and then shoved some extra arms on the back piece, I suppose. One, it's lazy parts reuse. Two, it's old parts reuse. Three, there's no waist swivel or crunch, or there's no waist cut. There's no ab crunch. There's no ab swivel. There's nothing. There's no articulation at all in this torso. So, be aware of that before you go buying it. For our head articulation, that's all of our downward head articulation, and our upward head articulation is pretty good for a figure that I'm not sure will ever be able to really use it. The paint applications on my particular figure, if you can see, are a little bit rough. I've got a little scuffing there. The teeth are alright, but they're not perfect. It's an alright figure. I haven't even gotten into the rest of the articulation. Already I'm just saying it's an alright figure. For our shoulder articulation, if I can get our shoulders to come up for these particular top arms, it looks like that is it. We can barely get a T-pose out of him. And that's out of any of our 3 sets of arms. That took a little bit of doing just to position these arms all into a T-pose. I'm not gonna lie. But there you have it. That's what they look like in said T-pose. They all have bicep swivels up here. They all have double jointed elbows that can get a decent flex. It's not that good flex. It's not quite. But it's close. For his hands, we have some very, we'll call them unique design choices. They have the in and out wrist articulation, but he only has 1 set of hands for each set of hands. It's a very odd sentence. What I'm saying is, they didn't give us any extras, so we can't do all open or all closed. It looks to be an exact 50-50 split down the middle for open and closed hands, but they're literally just alternating. I just realized that. Fist, open, fist, open, fist, open. It's just alternating between the two. If they could have given us, honestly, 1 more open on this side, 2 more open on this side, I'd have been alright with that. I'd have been alright with that, because then you kind of could have mixed and matched on your own. I'd love it if I could pop off this hand, or this hand rather, use all open hands for the bottom to make him hold up someone, use 2 closed fists to make him punching someone with them a la Goro from Mortal Kombat. It's a very unique design choice, I'll say that. Additionally, on my camera, this is looking very bright. It's actually a very muted red that I'm seeing in person. For our hip articulation. Wow! That is some of the best hip articulation we've seen out of Hasbro, period. Funny that they would use it on, of all things, Doppelganger. For our thighs, we do, of course, have a thigh cut here. It is a pretty tight cut. We do have the double-jointed knee, which goes pretty much all the way back. It's a pretty good flex, I'm not gonna lie. For our calves, we do have a boot cut here, thankfully. We do also have the rocker ankles here, where they go a painful and weird degree out, and a incredibly painful and weird degree in. That is as far forward as you're going to get it, though, which is a little bit unfortunate. But if you're looking for him to go on point, he definitely can with his weird talon feet. My thing is, honestly, when I pose this doppelganger figure, because of course I'm going to pose him probably by my Carnage figure. I'm going to do so in the very down-low poses that he's known for doing. He's known for being very low to the ground, like so. And I know posing him is it's just going to be a nightmare. I can already tell. This is going to be a nightmare figure to pose. I might be swapping around some hands as I do the posing, but he is not going to be an easy one for me to really get to grips with, is he? And he makes for an alright looking figure from this angle, but they definitely could have done some things better. Namely, just adding in any kind of waist. I mean, anything at all would have vastly improved this figure. Making it so I could have put these legs a little bit further forward with the ankle articulation. Anything at all would have greatly helped out with the posing of this figure, and Hasbro just kind of cheaped out when they did it. He looks alright, and again, if you're nostalgic for the figure, if you're nostalgic for Doppelganger, because you really just love Maximum Carnage, I know I did, then go on ahead and grab him. Otherwise, honestly, get the part off eBay. It's really not worth it. It's just not. It is not worth it for this figure. Unless you specifically love Maximum Carnage. Unless you have a great love for the character. Unless you really care that much to have a doppelganger in your collection. Don't bother. On a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 3. It's a 3 for me. I like the figure. It's an iconic character. I know I'm going to put him with Carnage and Shriek. Maybe Lasher. Just kind of get the Maximum Carnage gang all together. But all in all, if it weren't for the fact that he's just a unique figure, I wouldn't even have him in my display. I wouldn't. His articulation is better than Spider-Ham's, but he's not as... He's unique looking. Kind of like Spider-Ham. Neither one of them is really a good figure, but it's a unique figure. I like the characters. I don't like the figures they made. They could have done a much better job. I'm a little bit disappointed, because I genuinely was thinking about buying a 6-armed Spider-Man just to make that figure. And here we are. Moving on. Let's get into a comic book hero for the day. Spider-Woman. Now, you might remember this as being the first appearance of Spider-Woman costume, not the more modern appearances that she's had. We, of course, have our window pane front, our art on the side, our art on the back, and, of course, all the goodies on the bottom. Inside, it looks like we have a very unique accessory in here. In addition, to our torso for Molten Man. And the torso for Molten Man gets its own separate tray because he's going to be, and say it with me, a big, beefy boy. I mean, look at this torso. It is in two separate pieces. I almost don't even want to put it together because I'd kind of like to throw some LEDs in here to make it so that he can kind of light up. Because, like I said before, it's weird. There's parts like this where it's translucent plastic covered in a paint that makes it so that you could still kind of see through it. Huh. It's kind of interesting to see how their swivels work from the inside. Even though I don't think this is a standard swivel. This is a very unique joint I think they made just for Molten Man. Whew. This is going to be a real mess of a figure when he all comes together. Popping that torso together so you guys can see just how big and beefy this torso is on its lonesome. Which way is the front? This looks like the front, I think. But that looks like the back. I don't know. Yeah, that looks right. I am trying to figure out, because, you know, normally with these Build-A-Figures, they make sense logically as to how they're put together. This one does not. Like, at all. Alright. We'll go with that. I think the waist was turned around on mine. Some assembly required. No kidding. Alright. He is already big and beefy. But we'll save that for later on. In the meantime, let's take a look at the figure in question here. Spider-Woman, Julia Carpenter. Now, I will admit, this is the costume that I got to know Julia Carpenter in best. I know she's had several iterations of her costumes throughout the years, but this is the one that I know her for the best. Now, inside the packaging here, we don't have a whole lot of extra accessories, but we do have one unique accessory. And that is our little bit of webbing there. We've got our Julia Carpenter figure here, and this weird webbing shot coming out of her wrist. It's a neat idea, and I do wish they'd do more effects like this, but... And I do like the translucent plastic, I do. The fact that this is such a mess down here at the base, and it is one solid piece, there is no, there's zero articulation down here. I can words today. There is zero articulation at this wrist. It's just one molded piece with a little bit of paint on it. It's a big mess down here at the base. And the rest of it looks pretty cool. But it is a little bit of a mess. Before we get into that, because of course we're going to have to put that on, as it is a unique piece, let's get into our figure here. We can already tell with this mane of hair we're going to get zero neck articulation, and just as I figured, yep, that's as far back as her head goes. As far as forward neck articulation, she can actually look down better than any figure I've seen before. She can look straight down. She can see her toes. That's something to be said. So, for her arm articulation, we can get to a T-pose. It's not bad, it's not great, but at least it's a T-pose. For her elbow articulation here, with her single jointed elbows, we can barely get to 90 degrees. What an odd design choice to make. Why in the world would you only ever do single jointed females, with the exception of Rescue, who was just an Iron Man mold? For her hand articulation, it is the standard in and out, not the much nicer and much more usable up and down. But I guess for a Spider-Man character, it does work so that they can do something like this pose. And since we're here, let's pop this on and see exactly what... It's a neat idea. I wish there was more articulation here so that I can really use it to full effect. It's just kind of a weird shape to it, but if I pose this version of Julia Carpenter, I will be using, of course, this effect piece, but I think I've got her modern costume, as it's affectionately called, Spider-Mama costume, but I think that's the one I've got posed right now, as opposed to even her classic costume, or this, which I believe is her first appearance costume. Though I might be wrong on that. I'm sure that I am. This is the costume that I know her as best from back in the day. For our waist swivel, which, once again... I don't even need to say it, Hasbro. You already know. Give your female characters a weight. Give them an ab crunch. Just give them an ab crunch. It's fine if you do. I guarantee it's fine. For our ab swivel, we have a abysmal amount of side to side. That's all that you're getting. That's everything. For our forward and backward articulation, that's all the forward. And that is all of your back. For our hip articulation, that's it. That's all. Quentin Beck has better hip articulation than Julia Carpenter. Guys, I can't even tell you, just... I know that it sparked controversy in how women are posed in comics, but I'm sure that we can put up a graphic about the iconic Spider-Woman pose, where her costume looks like she's painted on and she's far too low, and it's obviously just a way to make you look at her backside. It's actually one-to-one a pose that Spider-Man did before, but whatever. This character can't even come close. Not even come close to the poses that Spider-Woman is shown as being able to do. Moving on. We have our thigh cuts here, which are the tightest thigh cuts of the day, and that's saying something. A little bit of paint smudging here and here. For our double jointed knees, she can actually go pretty much all the way back. She was going further back, but for some reason or another, the gummy joints, yep, they're just making her not have as much not hip. She doesn't have as much hip articulation as she should, but she's not having as much knee articulation as she should either. She has no Boot cuts once again. I don't even need to do the super zoom. You guys already see the face I'm making.
Disappointed!
For our ankle articulation. Do we not have rocker ankles? Oh, come on. Guys, if she's got rocker ankles, I can't find them, and I'm not going to go breaking this figure just to see if the rocker ankles will rock. That's as far forward as we're going, and that's as far back. It's not even quite on point. It's not as far back as Doppelganger. Hasbro. You guys gotta fix this. You guys have to fix this. Julia Carpenter is the original Spider-Woman. She has been in comics since, I think, the 60s. She deserves better than this. She deserves much better than this. This figure is the most I've seen you guys phone something in since Spider-Ham. Or maybe since Doppelganger. I don't know. This whole wave feels kind of phoned in with the exception of the 3 MCU characters. Plus, maybe 2 more that we've got coming up. So far, it feels like the only things that are actually cared about are the MCU characters. But I'm sure you guys are going to make me eat my words. Fingers crossed with the next 2 figures. For this figure, before we move on, it's alright. Is it great? No. Am I going to try and lie to you and say it is? No. If you need a Julia Carpenter figure, all new, all different Julia Carpenter came out a couple of waves ago. She was pretty easy to find. Get that one. It's a cool looking figure. It's a newer design. If you want this classic version of her, and you don't have the original ToyBiz one, then yeah, go ahead, get this version. Otherwise, she's an easy pass on my side. If it weren't for the fact that she comes with the giant torso of Molten Man, I'd say to get the build-to-figure piece online. If you can find her for cheap, go ahead. Otherwise, it's an easy pass. She's a 5 out of 10 for me. She's a 5 out of 10 because I don't think I have this costume of Spider-Woman. The effect piece is kind of cool. I wish I could use it on other Spider-Women, but because of the white glove, I won't be able to. Yeah. Honestly, I'm a little bit disappointed there. But, moving on. We have a comic book villain, one that I've been very much waiting to find or get any kind of Marvel Legend for, and that is Scorpion. Now, of course, we've got Scorpion here in this beautiful case. Our window pane on the front, our art on the side and back, with all of our other figures in the wave on the bottom. On the inside of this, I'm pretty sure Mac doesn't have a lot of accessories except for his most important one, and it looks like they have made all of my dreams come true with that. And given him a posable tail. Of course, we have the other foot of Molten Man here. Huh. What weird choices in articulation.
Get over here!
I'm not sure what else to say about this. That's very odd. This is going to be quite a figure to review at the end here. I'm not going to lie to you guys. That's weird. Moving on. We don't have anything on the backing here other than the neat web. But on the inside, we have the only thing we need. Mac Gargan and a beautiful long scorpion tail. Now, this is the first time in the line of actual Marvel Legends for Matt Gargan. There was a Spider-Man Classics that we got of the Scorpion, or at least of the Matt Gargan Scorpion. Matt Gargan has had a different figure in the Spider-Man Classics wave as well, but that was as his tenure as Venom. You would be able to tell it was him as Venom and not Eddie Brock, mostly because it has a weird scorpion tail on a Venom figure. So, for our first foray into Scorpion as a Marvel Legend, already, I'm pretty happy. If anything, because of how long this tail is. Look at this, guys. I mean, just look at this. This is a thing of beauty. This spans almost my entire setup. Actually, from tip to tip, it does span my entire unboxing setup area. That's a beautiful thing. That means that that's almost 18 inches of just scorpion tail. Not gonna lie, me likey a lot. For the figure itself, before we get into posing with this tail and just how much I love that they did a posable tail, unlike Dr. Otto Octavius' arms, which were all static pieces. Let's get into the articulation. Now, I do note something here. The mouth on this is painted as he was originally, but on his artwork, they actually did it as the open mouth. That's very odd, side by side. Now, the original look of the Scorpion costume did have the full mask even around the lips, and it was a very weird look. In more modern comics, you've been able to see his mouth. But this one's going with the original. I'm still alright with this. For his head articulation. Wow, he can actually look up to a great degree. Actually, the best we've seen today. And he can look down the second best we've seen today. Only bested by, of all people, Julia Carpenter. We have, of course, got our shoulder articulation, which can get to a little bit better than a T-pose. He goes a little bit over that 90-degree mark. I'll take it. We, of course, also have our bicep swivels. Oh, that was another thing Julia didn't have that I didn't even notice at the time. For our arm, our double-jointed elbows, I'll call it. I will say that, ladies and gentlemen, once again, for the second time today, we've got, and say it with me, that good flex. We almost got it out of Doppelganger, but between Quentin Beck and our boy Matt Gargan here, we're both getting that good flex out of him. It's about time. We have, of course, got the standard in and out articulation on our wrists here. Not that you're really going to be using the wrists for much posing anyway. Not with this big, beautiful tail here. For our... Well, we only have, once again, a swivel to this character, not a crunch of any kind, which is... Actually... Huh. I'm just noticing something, ladies and gentlemen. Of every figure that we have in today's unboxing, we have exactly one ab crunch. Out of the whole lot, there's exactly one figure with an ab crunch. And it's the final figure that we're going to be reviewing before we get into our build-to-figure. Every other figure of this wave has only a swivel and no crunch. Now with Mac, it's almost acceptable. You can almost get it because he's got the scorpion tail here, which I believe is attached, but it could be just mostly attached. I'm not entirely sure, because it's only mostly on there. But imagine the poses you could get with him if this were an ab crunch instead of an ab swivel. This close, Hasbro. This close to perfection. For our ab swivel, actually, I'll give him credit. He's got a decent degree of motion in and out, backward. That's as much as you're getting. I wouldn't expect much because of that tail in the way. Actually, you can get even a little further. And then, you can actually go a decent degree forward. For this character, I will actually excuse the lack of an ab crunch because that ab swivel is done so well. We, of course, have our hip articulation here. Something else I just noticed Julie Carpenter didn't have. If I had a nickel for every piece of articulation she didn't have,
I'd have 8 nickels.
This video would be monetized. For our hip articulation, best that we've seen since Quentin Beck. Best hip articulation we've seen. I'm not sure if it's as good or better than we saw with Doppelganger, but it is it's definitely better than Julia's. I'm going to say it's as good hip articulation as we saw in Quentin Beck MCU's Mysteria. We've, of course, got the thigh cuts here. The double jointed knees, which can go a decent degree back. It's not horrendous. The boot cuts here. The rocker ankles, of course. A painful degree in and a tremendous degree out. While also having a decent degree of forward motion and, if I'm not mistaken, just that far. He's almost able to go on point back. He's so close, but he's just not quite able to do it. Now, for the big draw to this particular figure, it is this tail. The tail, of course, has a posable wire on the inside of it, making it so that you can bend it and shape it as you see fit, meaning that you can have your Mac Gargan Scorpion with his tail posed up, ready to strike. If we can get this kind of in the right shape. Of course, this will take some posing to do. This will take a little bit of time and effort on the collector's part, but you can pose it so that he can be right on top of Spider-Man, ready to deal that killing blow. And I'll be honest, that's probably how I'm going to pose him, is ready to deal a killing blow to old Webhead. I very much enjoy this figure. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. So far today, this is my favorite figure. He's wonderful. He's absolutely wonderful. He checks all my boxes as a classic comic book villain that I've been dying to get a Marvel Legend of since they started the line, who's never gotten one before. And again, I know that there's a ToyBiz Spider-Man Classics out there. I know this because I own it. But, I don't know, I really like this version. I think it's well done. I might be speaking a little early here, but so far, this is my figure of the wave. If you don't have any version of Scorpion, which there aren't a whole lot out there, if you need a version of Scorpion to go with your Sinister Six, to go with really any Spider-Man Rogues Gallery setup that you could possibly have, grab this figure. It is fantastic. I love everything about it. It goes wonderfully in a comic book setup. I might even put him in an MCU setup, as we have seen Mac Gargan in the MCU, namely in Spider-Man Homecoming. This is a fantastic figure. There's only like 1 or 2 things I'd have done differently. He's gonna get... I'm gonna give him a 9 out of 10. I thought about giving him an 8. I'm gonna give him a 9 out of 10. Grab this figure. It is wonderful. It's well worth the price. He's awesome. I love him. He's fun. Which, in the end, it's all about collecting toys. If you're not having fun, why are you doing it? He's a fun figure that goes great in any Spider-Man Rogues Gallery collection, any Sinister Six collection. I love it. I love everything they did here. Grab this figure. Sorry, I'm gushing a little bit right now. But, speaking of gushing, we're going to go on to our next Spider-Man villain. He's a hefty boy. And that is Hydro Man. Now, you might recognize Hydro Man as another member of the Sinister Six in various incarnations. He's been a Spider-Man villain in various points in time. Part of Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery. And actually making me eat my words, as he is one of 2 figures to have an ab crunch. I thought he was another one that only had a waist swivel, but no, he indeed has an ab crunch. So, enough of me talking about it, let's get into this figure. So, on the front, of course, we've got our window pane, we've got our artwork on the side and back, all about Morris Bench here, who, I will admit, his face is a little bit weird. But I know that they did that based off of the comic book. I just personally wish that they made his face on the figure look more like his face on the artwork. I will also admit I love all of these effects they gave him. But let's pop out our Molten Man head to go along with our Molten Man Build-A-Figure, which will, of course, be the last figure that we review today. If we can even pop that on. That did not want to pop on at all. Oh, you are not a handsome fella. Eesh. Oof. He is hard to look at. Before we get into that, let's get into our Hydro Man figure. Now that is a nice thing. I will talk about that in just a moment. I'll talk about that with Morris in just a moment. The backing, of course, as I said before, does not have the Spider-Man Far From Home logo. It's just a web on the back. What I was just gushing about, and now you all understand the pun, was the fact that they gave Hydro Man these removable pieces here for his feet that give him more of that hydration power look. So it's not just on his arms, but with a quick little click, you've got Hydro Man being all sorts of, yeah, hydrating? I'm not sure what word we're going to use here. Especially not one that'll get us demonetized.
Wet.
Anyway. Now, a thing I will note is, as much as I am loving this figure already, a lot of him is part reuse. That's right. He has a lot of part reuse to him, and you wouldn't expect from where. The chest, the legs, even the boots, we've seen before in Luke Cage. That's right. The chest, the legs, and the boots are all from the MCU's Luke Cage. They just had to change the color of the neck here, put a new head on, put some new arms on, and bam, you've got yourself a Hydro Man. Now this is Hydro Man's more of his classic outfit. There was a previous Hydro Man figure released as part of the Spider-Man Classics line that was in a very unique stylized outfit. I'll probably take a picture of this one next to that one, as I did an unboxing with that one well over a year ago. Sorry, I'm kind of messing with the articulation as I'm just looking at this, because he's got some real weird articulation to him. Because these are some very big, beefy arms. Anyway. I like the fact that it's more of the classic look of Hydro Man here. He's going to go well next to Scorpion and other members of the Sinister Six, including Sandman. For our articulation for Hydro Man here, he can look a decent degree down and a fair degree up. For his shoulder articulation, we've pretty much already gotten it there, but he can give us slightly better than a T-pose. Mostly it's better in this arm. This arm, it's pretty much just a straight T-pose. It's at 90 degree. It's a little bit better than 90. But, you're pretty much getting what you see here. His arm articulation is a little unusual, because his arms are a little unusual. He has a elbow joint here, but if you can't see, it's a single jointed elbow, and this might be the only case where I excuse a single jointed elbow, because you can barely pivot these things as is because of the sculpt on them. He makes for a very unique figure. These arms, they don't have a whole lot of articulation to them. You're seeing as much as the elbow is moving, which, yikes, we aren't getting any kind of flex, much less that good flex. Oh no, we aren't getting any flex whatsoever. But the guy's made of water, so I don't know if that's more or less excusable. His hand articulation here for this gigantic hand, it goes in and out somewhat, but it's not anything I'd write home about. And it's not great hand articulation, but it does work. However, you're not getting him for articulation, are you? You're getting him for the big waves coming out of each arm. Now, I will say, one thing I do wish they did, I kind of would have liked just an extra set of civilian arms, non-powered up arms, just to make it so that you could easily put him into a civilian setting. Put him into a setting where he's not, oh, sorry about that, where he's not Hydro Man. Edit this part out.
You're not my supervisor!
The Mac Gargan gave us as good with just an ab swivel. It's not bad, but it's not great. We've of course got the waist swivel here. For our hip articulation, it's not quite as good as Mac or Quentin, but it's definitely better than Julia. I'll say that. It's some decent leg articulation. Of course, we've got our thigh cuts here. Our double jointed knee here, which can go a decent degree back. Again, it's nothing to write home about, but it's decent. We have the rocker ankles here, which can go a fair degree in and out, a fair degree forward, and a abysmal degree back. It's mostly because of the flare at the bottom of the jeans here, keeping him from going any further back or forth. All in all, he's a cool figure. I'm not gonna really say otherwise. He's a cool figure. I like the things they did with him. I like the powered up bits for the legs here. I know with the ToyBiz version, you could actually remove the entirety of him from below the waist and just pop him onto a water spout, but they had nothing at all for his arms. Personally, if I could remove the arms from this and put them onto him, I might actually use that figure over this one. Or if I could figure out how to pop the waist off of this one, I might use the waist from the other one on him. Just to make the ultimate Hydro Man figure. All in all, though, he's not bad. He's not bad whatsoever. He does have that sense that he's going to be lifting up Spider-Man with this arm whilst... See, that is the problem with these joints as they've been sculpted here. You want to make him look like he's about to punch Spidey. But the best you can do... I suppose you can kind of make it look like it's coming. With a little bit of doing, I guess you can kind of make it. That's the thing. It's cool for what it looks like in the translucent plastic. I love it. But it does lack some of the articulation options here for making it look like he's going to be beating the daylights out of our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. All in all, he's a cool figure, though. If you don't have the ToyBiz version of Hydro Man, even if you do and you want a more standard comic-accurate version, grab him. He's cool, and yeah. If you throw him in with some of the other Rogues Gallery that we've seen even today, but you're mixing MCU and comic book, I don't care. That's a pretty neat setup, and it's half of the Sinister Six. Granted, I'm not sure if it's an official version of the Sinister Six with the three of them. I believe it was at one point, but I'm probably wrong. The Sinister Six has had so many different iterations, and the Sinister 66 and the Sinister 666. Come on now. I'm sure they've all been trying to kill Spider-Man at one time or another. They look cool together. Honestly, these three are the wants for the wave. At least as of thus far. We do have one more figure to do. Out of 10, I'm going to give Hydro Man here a solid 7. No, a solid 8. A solid 8. There is some part reuse here, but it's well done. The new parts with the legs and the arms. The head... I'm sorry, the head reminds me of Toad. Really does. Like, the way his face looks reminds me of Toad. Is it bad? No, it is technically comic accurate. I was looking for more of this face and less of this face. But that's just me. Something a little bit more serious and a little bit less sculpted in Play-Doh. Out and out, though, I'm going to give him an 8. He's a good figure. He's got some heft to him. The arms are really heavy. The arms probably weigh as much as the body. The arms make him a hefty boy. I think he's a pretty cool figure. I think he's going to go great in my Rogues Gallery of Spider-Man villains, along with Doc Ock, along with my various goblins, along with Scorpion, as we've seen today, because he's going to be replacing my old Scorpion, that's for sure. He's worth the pickup. He's definitely worth the pickup. If you can find Hydro Man just out in the wild, if you find him on sale, hey, awesome. If you find him just out in the wild and go, you know, he's pretty cool. I kind of want some Rogues Galleries for my Spider-Man. Get him. Get him, he's worth it. Finally, we have one last figure for today before we get into our Build-A-Figure. And thankfully, he's not a menace. Not like that Spider-Man guy. Let me introduce you all to the newest member of the MCU, Night Monkey. I know it says Spider-Man down here. Don't pay any attention to that. Night Monkey! He's like the European knockoff version of Spider-Man. So, let's see what we've got here. We've, of course, got our window pane showing everything that's on the inside here with our artwork. Our backing here with our same artwork. And, of course, the remainder of the wave. We've opened up the other 5 members with the exception of the new advanced suit for Spider-Man from Spider-Man Far From Home, because first of all, Spider-Man is a menace, second of all, he's no longer in the MCU, and third of all, he doesn't have a build-to-figure piece, so I'm not going to bother. Because I don't need an 88th Spider-Man figure. Inside, we've got the weirdest looking arm for any build-to-figure. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, that's an arm. And it is a weird one. And it looks like our random steel beam kind of gets shoved into there. Wow, this is a weird figure. Like, out and out, this is going to be an odd one. It's the only thing that says that all of this is a hand is these kind of melted together fingers. And let's put on our last piece of our build-to-figure, this weird final arm. Okay, yeah, that's a figure, I think. You guys, this big beefy boy is a weird big beefy boy. Like, we're gonna get a lot of weird flex but okays when we're doing the review on this guy, because there's a lot of questionable articulation to this. Just the sculpt is weird. Before we get into that, though, the backing on this one, of course, is the tactical Spider-Man from Spider-Man Far From Home. It's his logo as seen at the end of the movie. It's not the web like the others earlier in the wave. I'm gonna need to be very careful about this head because of Night Monkey's glasses, goggles. I'm not sure what you want to call the things. Now, I will say, I heard a unique idea online with this figure, and looking at it, I might actually go with that idea, since this is the figure I'm seeing. It's funny, when this wave first came out, this was the figure I couldn't find anywhere. And a certain thing happened with my pre-order of the figure, where they said I never pre-ordered it, and I wasn't going to get it, period. So I just went straight to the source with Hasbro and said, "Hey Hasbro, can I get my figure?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure, here you go. Free shipping. You're good." We won't mention what company tried to say I never pre-ordered it, even though I gave them money for it. But it sounds kind of like Mbop. Lame hop. Something along those lines. Now, an idea I heard with this figure was to just get a mess of them as generic ninjas. And I'll be honest, that's exactly what it reminds me of, is just kind of a generic-looking ninja. It reminds me of those guys at the beginning of, I forget if it was the first or second Tomb Raider movie, that all infiltrated Lara Croft's house, dressed pretty much exactly like this. Just without the thwipping hands. So, I might actually do that once these figures go to clearance, since now it is the only figure that I can find from the wave in droves. Places that have none of the rest of this wave have 5 or 6 of this figure. Which is a little sad that no one else is getting this figure with that big build-to-figure piece. And the fact that no one else is seeing this and going, "That's a generic ninja." If we had some hands that could just hold stuff, I'd throw a couple swords into the hands of several of these guys and have them just as generic fodder. When they go clearanced out, and if I can get them for the same price that I just got 2 other Taloses for, where I just grabbed 2 Taloses for, I wish I was joking, you guys, like $3 each. It was literally nothing. Then I'll probably grab like 3 or 4 of these. See if I've got any hands that would work on other figures. Swap them out and make a couple generic ninjas. But before we get into all of that, let's get into our articulation. For our backward head articulation, he actually can look fairly far up, and for our downward neck articulation, the collar on this actually limits that quite some bit. Now, of course, because he has 2 heads, I would be remiss if we didn't take a look at what the alternative head looks like on him. Keeping in mind that we need to be very careful, because this one has the goggles up. It's a unique look. I'm alright with it. I'm not a huge fan. I do honestly think it looks better with the goggles down, more so than the goggles up. But I like that they added in that as an option. Out and out, yeah, I'll go with it. I'll go with it. For our shoulder articulation, we can get to a decent T-pose. Can't get much further, but we can get to that decent T-pose. What's really nice, and you don't see a lot on figures outside of Spider-Man, is that he does have the butterfly elbows, or the butterfly shoulders here, rather. Not butterfly elbows, that would be very weird. The butterfly shoulders here to give him even more flexibility and more range. Not sure why they gave him thwipping hands either, as this is clearly Night Monkey and not Spider-Man. And it would be weird to think that this would be a Spider-Man wave with no Spider-Man, but we didn't get that Spider-Man figure, so Night Monkey it is. We, of course, have the bicep articulation with the bicep swivel here. The double-jointed elbows. Ooh! So close. So close to perfection, but once again, Hasbro, we gotta get that good flex out of him. We're not getting it out of him. We got it out of Quentin. We got it out of Quentin Beck. We got it mostly out of our boy Doppelganger. We got it, actually, to a pretty nice degree out of Scorpion. Night Monkey here, he doesn't have that good flex. We need it. We need our Night Monkeys to have a good flex on him. And of course, we have the in and out wrist articulation for our wrists. Now, one thing of note that I'm noticing as I'm doing the articulation tests here, he's got like 3 different kinds of paint on him, where you've got a matte smooth or a matte finish here, but a very smooth gloss finish on some other parts of him. It does make the tactical look of him stand out a bit, at least in person, where you can see some of the different patterns to him. I'm not sure how I like it, though. It does differentiate the sculpt enough where it makes things pop and makes things stand out, and it's not just one solid color. It's okay. You know what? I give it. I'll accept it. I'll accept. It's a pretty nice thing, actually, now that I think about it, because it does make certain things pop more than others. Gives them some dimension to the figure. For our ab crunch. Ouch! That is as far forward as Spider-Man is getting, but at least he can go this far back. I'm sorry, Night Monkey, my apologies. I'm not sure why I keep on referring to him as Spider-Man. He's not a menace like that Spider-Man. He, of course, has waist articulation. We have, for our hip articulation, actually, pretty decent hip articulation. It's not great. It's not as great as it could be, but it's decent. One note I will say, all of his joints feel a little bit gummy. They're not as solid as they should be. They're a little, yeah, they're a little gummy. Are they horrendous? No. Are they pretty good? No, but they're alright. They're alright enough. For our thigh articulation, we of course have the thigh cuts here. The double jointed knees. He can go almost all the way back. It's being limited a little bit here by his calves. But it's a decent enough cut. We do not have a boot cut on him, which is kind of weird because this is a completely new sculpt. You'd think they would have thrown that in to make Night Monkey almost as flexible as Spider-Man. But, I mean, since Spider-Man's out of the MCU anyway, I'm sure we'll get another Night Monkey figure. I'm positive, right? 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 We'll definitely get another one, right? For our ankle articulation, we can go a painful degree in and a disgusting degree out. Forward, and we can get some forward articulation there, and yes, he can go all the way on point. That's something I would expect to see out of a Spider-Man. Oh well. Well, at least we've got this very cool Night Monkey. Even with his odd thwipping hands, which I expect to see that out of Spider-Man, the thwipping hands, but I mean, whatever. I suppose Night Monkey can use them too. I'm not sure for what. Of course, you guys know I'm just playing. Spider-Man might be a menace to society, but Night Monkey, he's good people. Out and out, is he a good figure? He's decent. If you missed out on the Spider-Man Noir figure, he's a good enough stand-in for that. If you really want a figure of Spider-Man in the stealth suit costume from Far From Home, he's a decent enough figure of that too. If you want, like I said before, for me personally, once these guys, since they're the most populate, they're the most easily accessible figure in the entire wave. The most populous, however you want to put it. They're the figure easiest to get your hands on, which means they're going to sit there and rot on shelves, probably for a good year. When this figure gets clearance down to $5, I'm probably going to grab another 2 or 3. Why? That is a generic ninja if I've ever seen one. Some different hands to hold a sword or a sai or something. Whatever. And I can put a bunch of him around Daredevil and have it be all cool. Works for me. Bunch of them around Wolverine. Sure, why not? Honestly, any way that I can get some generic baddies to just be shredded through in photography and in different ways to pose them, I'm down with. Out and out for this figure, I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10. His unique look for the MCU Spider-Man, he's a unique figure to have in your collection, since he might be the last Spider-Man figure to come out, unless of course a deal gets struck, which it probably will, out of the MCU. More likely than not, he might... Who am I saying more likely than not? They're going to strike a deal. But as it stands, he is the last MCU figure to come out of Spider-Man. So grab him while you can. Nah, honestly, he's an alright figure. If you like him, if you want that big weird arm for our last figure to review, then grab him. Otherwise, you can pass. Yeah, 6 out of 10. He's a 6. He's not fantastic. He's not awful. He's got some cool articulation to him. He's got a neat sculpt. It's not a really iconic costume. Honestly, yeah, the big thing I'm going to use him for is a generic army build different ninjas. When he gets down to like $5. Alright, so we've sat through quite a collection of figures today. We've had 3 villains, 3 definite heroes, none of that menace Spider-Man. We've had Hydro Man, Scorpion. We've had Doppelganger, all of our villain side. We've had, of course, the heroic, may he forever rest in peace, Mysterio. We've had Julia Carter, and we have had the heroic Night Monkey. So, what remains? Well, only one thing, and that is our build-to-figure of the wave, Molten Man. And just plopping him down, I'm sure you guys can tell he is, and say it with me, a big, beefy boy. This figure is just a mess. I mean, just to look at this. Just to look at this mess. Someone let their kid go crazy with Play-Doh and said, yep, that's an action figure. I mean, this is so ridiculous. I don't even know how I'm going to display this. It's so weird. But he's such a cool monster-looking character that I can't not display him. For relative size, this is your Molten Man. This is your Night Monkey. Any questions? Now, was he much bigger in the movie? Yes, of course he was. Molten Man was seen as being gigantic. He was an elemental. So yeah, it's much bigger in the movie. This is as big as they could get him for a figure, and let me tell you, he's a lopsidedly heavy on this side. This tiny little right arm. Retro, cue the meme here. Oh, the hand ain't strong enough.
Oh, my other hand isn't strong enough. You take my little hand.
No! That's exactly what's going on here. This is so... I don't even know what to say with this. It's such a weird, just, sculpt. At least it's a new and unique sculpt. I'll give him that. Let's try and dig into the articulation of this, because it is such a weird figure with the weirdest articulation. Like, it's got head articulation, and that's it. That's all of it. Down and up. That's it. It can't go any further back or any further down. There's too much just kibble around the neck for it to go any further. For his shoulder articulation, what is this? I don't even. I can't quite call it a T-pose because it's not even. Jeez, I don't know what to call this thing. That's as far as its shoulders are gonna go. It has bicep swivels, which it's one step above Julia Carpenter. That's for certain. It does have single-jointed elbows, which this arm's elbow goes from here to here, and that's it. And this one's, I guess it goes about 90 degrees. We're not getting that good flex out of it, but it's getting some weird flexes. I just don't know here. He does have the in and out wrist articulation on both hands. Well, hand and stump here. Although this wrist is very tight. It's just so weird. We do have, of course, this upper... I don't even know what this is going on here. I'd call it... I guess it's kind of a swivel. And we've got a secondary ab swivel or waist swivel here. Look, man, I don't even know. For our hip articulation, yeah, that's it. With, of course, a thigh cut here. See, here's the thing. They had a sculpt in mind with this, and they just went with it. But man, unless it is in the one exact way they want you to pose it, you're getting just nothing out of it. Because, yeah, it's got a thigh cut, and yes, it has a single jointed knee on each knee. So yes, he can go on his knees, I suppose? But you can't straighten out both legs. He does have a rocker ankle here. Okay, that's super weird. His forward ankle articulation's here, and his backward is here. So there is ankle articulation on that foot. This one has it too, but this one's more obvious. With disturbing degrees of rocker ankle action in and out. It's... God, it's weird. Here's the thing, though. As weird as this figure is, I gotta admit, I want to display him. I want to display this weird, weird figure. I mean, it's obvious that they had a creative decision in mind for how you were supposed to display it. But that's the thing. Every part of how they designed this figure, they pretty much designed a statue and they gave it articulation. They pulled the McFarlane on us. Let me show you guys on the front facing. This is pretty much the only pose that he doesn't look absolutely insane in. Now, is it a cool looking pose? Yes, it is. It's a very cool looking pose. But it essentially makes him into a statue. Is it a cool figure? Yeah. Again, it's got that weird Monster Man vibe to it that makes it cool. Have we gotten a Molten Man figure before? Not of any kind, much less this weird elemental one. Okay. Alright. I'll go with it. It's so weird. It's so weird, but it's so cool at the same time. Like, it is an odd-looking figure. It is an odd choice of articulation. But it works. It works. With some of the weirdest articulation I've ever seen. It works. So, review for our build-to-figure here. If you really, really love Far From Home, and you want the Elemental to have Mysterio projecting an Elemental and fighting it, grab it. It's cool. It'll go great with a setup like that. That sounds like an awesome setup, I'm not gonna lie. Have Night Monkey and have Mysterio both fighting this thing in a setup around like a busted up carnival. Yeah. That sounds like a really cool photo. That sounds like a really cool setup to make. Beyond that, if you want just the cool Monster Man type figure, grab it. Is it a necessary part of your collection? No. However, if you're already going to be grabbing the iconic villains of Hydro Man, Scorpion, and Mysterio, and since I said if you wanted to be doing that fight scene with Mysterio, Night Monkey, and Molten Man, then yeah. You've already gone this far. You're missing 2 figures to get the build-to-figure here. Grab your classic Julia Carpenter. Grab Doppelganger. If you can get them on sale, all the better. If you don't want Night Monkey, he's a cool enough figure, but he's not necessary. Honestly, the villains are where this wave shines. Minus Doppelganger. The villains make this wave shine. If you're getting this much of it, just get the rest of it. It's a cool, weird-looking build-to-figure. You can use it as just kind of a monster figure. If you want to have him go against, I don't know, Blade. If you want to just have this weird monster-looking figure with a League of Monsters type, with Man-Thing, Vampire by Night, or Werewolf by Night, rather, Morbius, sure, go ahead. All in all, it's a unique sculpt. It's a unique figure. It's a unique build-to-figure, and it's one of the most unique ones we've gotten in a long time. It's not got great articulation by any stretch of the words. And it only really looks good in the one pose that they intend for you to do it in, and that is the one seen on the back of the packaging here. Beyond that, the only thing that's really posable is this one arm. All in all, I'd give it a 6. No, I'd give it a 7. I'd give it a 7 because it is such a unique sculpt that it's going to be a talking point. People are going to look at this in your collection and go, what is that thing? You know, say it's Molten Man from Spider-Man Far From Home. It's just so unique and so weird that I love it. And if you don't want to have your steel beam in his arm to make it look a little bit more just generic monstery, I'm sure you can even remove this one somehow. I'm personally not going to be, but it's a unique enough figure that it'll stand out in your collection. And as I said before, there's a part of me that wants to crack it open, put in an LED, and make it so that his core is just shining with an LED in the middle, because this is all translucent plastic here in the center, and here on the upper arms and the upper thighs. It's only on the lower arms and lower legs that he is not translucent plastic. So I feel that LED would kind of go through and really make him shine. It's a cool enough figure. It's a cool enough figure to say, grab the wave. You'll get some really good figures out of it with Mysterio, with Scorpion, with Hydra Man. The other three, Night Monkey's generic as a ninja, Doppelganger fulfilled some Maximum Carnage niche, and Spider-Woman is Spider-Woman. It's not the best Spider-Woman we've gotten, but it's a decent enough one. In the meantime, thank you all so much for joining me today. This has been a ton of fun. Thank you for being a part of this and allowing me to continue doing what I love, which is unboxing figures and telling you guys about them. And I just love action figures. Thank you all so much for your support. From the bottom of my heart, I mean that. Thank you. So, next week, we have count them, two potential waves to unbox. So, I'm going to set up a poll on Twitter, and I want you all to tell me what you want to see. We have either the Caliban wave of X-Men Legends, or the Wendigo wave of X-Men Legends. So, you decide. What do you guys want to see? Personally, I really want to see the Caliban wave. That's because I know who's in the Caliban wave. And it makes me happy. Honestly, both waves are awesome. They're both really cool. I can't wait to unbox both of them. Plus, we will have bonus unboxings with both of those. But I won't tell you who we're going to be doing bonus unboxings of. So, thank you so much for joining me, everybody. Have a great day. Keep it nerdy, guys. And here, we'll do it this way with the Keep It Nerdy. That way we don't get dinged in the UK. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day.